You know the hour. Not midnight, not dawn. That dead middle stretch when the house is silent and your eyes snap open for no reason at all, and the ceiling is just a gray blur above you. And your mind, unhelpful as ever, starts doing math. You take your age, you subtract it from some number you half believe you'll reach, and the answer that comes back feels small, smaller than it used to. It isn't really about the number, though. It's the quiet certainty that comes with it. The feeling that the good part, the loud, wide-open part of your life already happened, and you were too busy to notice it leaving. So you lie there, and you brace for the downhill. You tell yourself the big chapters are closed, that from here it's just maintenance. Doctor's appointments, slower mornings, and the slow business of winding down. For years I believed that math at 3 in the morning. I let it decide things for me. But here's what I finally learned. Lying awake, just like you are, that arithmetic is wrong. And I can show you where. Notice when that arithmetic started running. It didn't hit you at 30. Something about now makes it feel late. And it helps to understand why, because the why is not what you think. For years, life handed you markers. First job, first house, the kids, each grade, each milestone stacked up like fence posts. You always knew what came next, because something was always coming next. Then the posts thin out, the kids are raised, the promotions slow. Nobody throws you a party for turning 53. The road ahead stops being marked, and an unmarked road feels like no road at all. And the birthdays change weight. The early ones you wanted. Then somewhere they flipped, and a candle became a subtraction instead of an addition. Same cake, whole different feeling in the room. The culture doesn't help. Look at every ad, every show. It pictures a future for the young and a recliner for you. Nobody's making movies about the great things you'll start at 58. So you assume there aren't any. That dread you feel at 3 a.m., it's a story you absorbed. The stalled milestones, the heavy candles, the culture that quit imagining you. Not one of those is the actual number of years you have left. That number nobody's shown you yet. But a story told in the dark can be checked against the ledger. And most of us never once run the actual arithmetic. We just feel the number, and the feeling always guesses low. So let's actually run it. Say you're 55 today. A man in decent health has, on average, another 25 years or so. A woman, more. That is not a footnote. That is a quarter century. 25 years. Go back 25 in your own life and look how much happened. You met people, moved houses, raised kids, changed careers. A whole world fit inside a span you now have again. Now count it a harder way. 16 or so waking hours a day. That's roughly 140,000 waking hours still in front of you. You have never once been handed a number that large and told it's small. And the weekends. Say 25 years left. That's 1,300 Saturdays, 1,300 slow mornings with coffee, 1,300 afternoons that belong to nobody but you. Try spending those and see how far you get. I know how this sounds. Averages, not promises. Nobody guarantees you the full count. But the dread wasn't running numbers at all. It just declared the good part finished and closed the book. Here's the thing, the 3 a.m. math never admits. The number left is enormous, not what's left of a life. A life, the scale isn't the problem. What we do with a number that big is the only real question. So if the number is that big, why does it feel so small? Why does the calendar keep thinning out like the last pages of a book you're not ready to finish? There's an actual reason for that. Think back to being a kid, and one summer felt endless. Every day held something you'd never done before. A first bike, a first sting, a first storm. Your brain was laying down memory like fresh concrete. Novelty stretches time. When everything is new, your mind records it in detail, and that dense stretch of memory feels long when you look back. A single new day can outweigh a whole ordinary month. Now think about last week. Same commute, same coffee, same 3 things on the list. Your brain, being efficient, files it all under nothing new here and barely writes it down. And routine that thin barely registers. A month of it collapses to almost nothing when you go looking for it later. That's the trick. It isn't that the years got shorter, it's that they left fewer marks. So the speeding up isn't a countdown. It's a filing problem. Your life didn't get shorter, your record of it got sparser, because you stopped handing your brain anything worth remembering. And here's the small mercy hiding in that. If routine is what shrank the years, then the fix isn't more years. It's more first times. The clock speeds up when nothing surprises you, and it slows the second you're paying attention again. So the years blur, and there's a reason yours blurred more than most. The middle of your life ran on repeat. Same commute, same alarm, same numbers on the mortgage statement, month after month after month. You weren't lazy, just the opposite. You were buried. Somewhere in there, a kid needed braces, the roof needed replacing, and a job wanted more hours than you had. You didn't drift through those years. You survived them. And here's the small mercy nobody tells you. Those packed years felt fast, precisely because they were full. You were never bored. You blinked, and a decade of soccer practices and school plays went by, and honestly, most of it was good. But full and fast came with a cost. When every day looks like the last, your mind stops keeping receipts. It files a whole year under one blurred heading and calls it done. You lived it. You just didn't get to remember much of it. So now you look back and the middle of your life reads like a smudge, and your gut draws the wrong conclusion. It says, if that much time vanished that fast, the rest must be nearly gone too. That's the trap. Because the speed you felt wasn't time running out. It was time running on autopilot. And the thing about autopilot is that it can be switched off. The busyness that swallowed those years is not a law of nature. It was a season. But here is the part nobody warns you about, the part that sneaks up quiet. One by one, the very things that ate those decades start letting go of your sleeve. The kids leave. The mortgage shrinks. The overtime stops mattering. You spent years wishing for a free Saturday. Now the whole calendar starts opening up, and the strangest thing happens. You don't quite recognize the feeling, because it has been so long since you had it. The last time your hours were truly your own, you were in your 20s. No small hands tugging your sleeve. No boss counting your minutes. Just an open evening and the dumb luxury of deciding what to do with it. And that time is coming back to you. Not because you earned it, though you did. It comes back because the people who needed you learned to stand on their own. That is the whole point of raising them. Sure, the quiet catches you off guard at first. A kitchen with nobody to feed. A phone that rings less. You mistake that silence for an ending. It isn't. It's just space, waiting to be filled with whatever you choose. This is the thing to hold on to. The busy years didn't spend your whole life. They spent one chapter of it. And what's left over, all that reclaimed time, is not scraps. It is the most discretionary time you have had in 30 years. So you have the time back. The question that keeps you up isn't whether you have hours anymore. It's whether it's too late to start anything real with them. Let me tell you about some people who answered that. There's a woman named Anna Mary Robertson Moses. Grandma Moses, most people called her. Her hands got too stiff for embroidery, so she picked up a paintbrush instead. She was nearly 80. She painted for over 20 more years. Her pictures ended up on Christmas cards, in galleries, in museums that hang the greats. A woman who started when most people assume the whole thing is finished. Then there's Ray Kroc. He was 52, selling milkshake machines, when he walked into a little burger stand and saw something. He built it into McDonald's. 52, and his biggest chapter hadn't even started. And Colonel Sanders, broke, 60s, driving around with a pressure cooker and a chicken recipe, getting turned down again and again. Kentucky Fried Chicken came out of that. Out of a man everyone would have called finished. Julia Child couldn't really cook until she was in her late 30s. Her first cookbook came out when she was nearly 50. The first TV show, later still. She taught a whole country to cook in the second half of her life. Here's what those four have in common. Not luck. Not genius. They just refused to believe the deadline in their own head. The deadline was a story. They crossed it and kept walking. So can you. Now, before you tell me those late starters had one thing you don't have, a working body, let's be honest about that. Because it's the real objection, and it deserves a straight answer. Yes, the body is changing. The knees announce the weather now. You read the menu at arm's length. You feel things in the morning that used to only happen after something. That part is real, and no pep talk erases it. But here's what I finally learned to separate. Some doors genuinely close. Nobody's making the Olympic team at 55. And some doors only feel closed because a magazine told you they were, and you never checked the handle. The exaggerated fears are the loud ones, that your brain is finished learning, that your body is one long downhill from here, that every ache is the beginning of the end. Fear is a terrible doctor. It diagnoses everything as terminal. Here's the mercy in the actual numbers. The body doesn't fall off a cliff at 60. It declines slowly, and most of that slope you can bend with your own two hands, walking, lifting a little, sleeping, showing up. The usable years aren't the frail ones you're picturing at the very end. They're the long stretch before that, the 20, 30 years where you can still climb the stairs, plant the garden, hold the grandkid. That's the real inventory. So yes, some doors close on the body. But while you were busy fearing what you're losing, you stopped counting what you've quietly been gathering. And it's a lot. You just never added it up. Start with the plainest one. Judgment. At 25, you had energy and no idea where to point it. You made the same mistake 4 times before it registered. Now you see it coming a mile off. You know which fights matter now. You know when someone is wasting your afternoon. That instinct cost you 30 years to build, and you'd never trade it back for a flatter stomach and a head full of nonsense. Then there's the money question, and I don't mean rich. I mean settled. The furniture's paid for. You know roughly what a month costs. That white-knuckle terror of the first of the month is mostly behind you now. And here's the quiet one nobody names. You have nothing left to prove. At 25, every room was a job interview. You performed. You worried who was watching. Somewhere along the way, you just stopped auditioning for people. Add the thick skin. A rejection that would have flattened you at 30 now barely lands. That's not defeat. That's armor you earned. So the time you've got left doesn't arrive empty-handed. It shows up with everything you spent a lifetime collecting. So you've got judgment, a little money, a thicker skin, and here's the strange part. A lot of us sit on all of that and still act like the game is already over. Here's the trap nobody warns you about. Believing it's too late doesn't just make you sad. It makes you stop. And stopping is how you actually run out the clock. You decline the invitation because what's the point at your age? You skip the class, put off the trip, don't call the old friend. Each no feels like realism. It's not. It's the dread spending your years for you. And the cruel joke is the story proves itself. You believe you're past it, so you don't try, so nothing happens, so you look around and go, see, nothing happens anymore. You built the very evidence you're grieving. A friend of mine, right around 60, wanted to plant fruit trees. I said, don't be silly, I'll never live to eat the apples. 10 years later, he's still there. 10 years. And no orchard. The trees would have been fruiting by now. That's the thing about too late. It's almost never a fact. It's a decision, and it quietly bills you for every year you keep making it. So once I stopped feeding that thief, I had a different problem. All this runway I'd been mourning was just sitting there, and I had no idea how to use it. Nobody hands you a manual for that. So I started small, embarrassingly small. I gave myself 30 days to try one thing I'd been circling for years. Not a new life. A 4-week experiment I could quit without shame if I hated it. Here's what that trick actually did. It killed the pressure. I wasn't deciding what to do with the rest of my life. I was deciding what to do until the next month, small enough to start. And starting was the whole game. The second thing was simpler and harder. I started saying yes. The reunion invite, the odd class, the friend's boat, the thing that made me tired just reading it. My reflex for 20 years had been no. I flipped it. Most of those yeses went nowhere. A boring evening, a hobby that didn't stick. That's fine. You're not looking for a hit rate. You're looking for the 2 or 3 that crack something open, and you can't tell which one's from the couch. And then, once a season or so, I did one genuinely hard thing. Not a hobby, something that scared me a little. Spoke up in a room, signed up for the thing I might fail at, the stuff that used to feel too late. That's it. That's the whole method. And it isn't one. Month-long test, a habit of yes. One hard thing, a season. No program. Just enough structure to stop me standing on that runway, wondering where the years went. So you say yes to one hard thing, and then you notice something funny. The stuff you talked yourself out of. The slow stuff. The stuff that takes years. That is exactly the stuff that finally fits. You know the trap you fell into. Why start the guitar now? By the time I'm any good, I'll be old. But you're gonna be that age anyway. The only question is whether you'll be able to play. A garden taught me this better than any speech. You put a bare stick in the dirt in April, and it just sits there mocking you. Nothing. Then one wet morning, leaves, it works on its own clock, not yours. And that patience, the thing you couldn't have summoned at 25, you've got it now. You've waited out mortgages. You've waited out kids, fevers at 3 in the morning. Waiting for a tree to fruit is nothing to you now. Some of the slow things aren't hobbies at all. It's the brother you haven't really talked to in 15 years. That doesn't get fixed in one dinner. It gets fixed the way a garden does. Slowly. On purpose. Over seasons. That's the thing nobody tells you. A 10-year project isn't a reason to feel behind. It's proof you believe in 10 more years. You don't plant an oak because you'll sit in its shade. You plant it because it should exist. So the garden, the guitar, the long, slow things, they all need one thing to start. And it's the same thing that woke you tonight. The dark bedroom again. The ceiling you know by heart. Same hour, same arithmetic pulling at you, but this time you run the number honestly, not the fearful one. Not the years you've lost, the mornings you actually have, and the count is bigger than the dread ever let you believe. Here's what I finally know now. The number was never the problem. What I did with the number was, all those nights I spent grieving time, I was spending it. That's the only real waste there is. So tomorrow I'll do one small thing, not a whole new life, one thing, and the morning after, another. That's how the second half gets lived. Not by fixing the count, but by finally believing it and getting up. If any of this resonated with you, tell me in the comments what you're planning to start or what you'd add from your own life. And if you'd like to keep thinking these things through together, subscribe and stay with me.